The Penguins had themselves a busy Tuesday night, making a few PTO signings. Hunter and I are going to talk about it right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. With me, as always, is Hunter Hodes. You can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. You can follow me on Twitter at Synonym for Wet. And you can also follow Hunter at Hunter Hodes. We thank you for making this your first listen or watch of the day. And let's jump right into it, Hunter. The Penguins were busy last night. They made 3 PTO signings, 2 defensemen, 1 forward, and let's get the first one out of the way here in Lubor Hajek, a defenseman, second-round pick, 2016, 25 years old. You know what? Take it away. You got the numbers there. I don't get it. It seems like a guy who is a third pairing at best kind of guy. That's about his ceiling at best. So what are your thoughts on it?
First off, I want to say you're doing a tremendous job hosting the show so far. This is the first time I've never had to host a episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. So this has been awesome. But
might as well have a crash course since, I gotta take the reins. Everybody shudders real quick later this week. So why not do it with the experienced guy first rather than jumping right into the cold water?
Hey, you're doing a great job so far. But yeah, getting back to Lubor Hajek, I'm not really someone who gets upset about PTOs or just really anything, a team I follow or cover does. I mean, maybe I'll get a little upset, but I don't overreact, I think is the better word for it. But this move just makes no sense. He's not good offensively. He's not good defensively. He's not good in transition, and he can't skate. I actually dove into a little bit of his film last night after I finished watching the latest episode of Ahsoka. And if you are not watching that show, you should be, because that show is great, and also Star Wars is awesome. But it looks like when he's out there, despite him being, around my age, he can't skate. It looks like he's just skating in mud. I actually think Jack Johnson is a better skater than Lubor Hajek, and that's kind of sad to say because we all know how bad Johnson was as a skater when he was a member of the Penguins. I think they have to be doing this as a courtesy to him or something like that. I just don't see the appeal to even signing him to a PTO. I would love to know the evaluation process that Kyle Dubas and the rest of the front office and Mike Sullivan used for this, because it doesn't make that much sense. The defensemen that are on the roster right now are all better than this guy. Heck, maybe he goes out there, has a great camp, earns himself a gig, but I would say that's on the very low end of probabilities right now. I just don't get it, considering the numbers and considering the tape.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. I also look at it this way. It might just be another body for camp competition, just to kind of send out that message of hey, listen, 2 more defensemen are coming to camp this year, so you're going to have to bring it if you want to make it, especially considering 4, if not 5 of the top spots on the Penguins NHL blue line are locked up. You know who's getting those positions. So it's just another person to maybe increase competition, even if he's not great. If somebody doesn't live up to him, it tells us more about the person who doesn't live up to them than Hajek.
Yeah, and I mean, he'll get a bunch of reps in camp. He'll also get a bunch in the preseason, I assume, too, because, a lot of the starters really don't play in many of the preseason games. It's mostly just used for a lot of the AHL guys, a lot of those other guys, stuff like that.
Your bubble guys, basically.
Yes. He'll get a lot of reps there, see what he can do in game action, maybe a better system. Mike Sullivan, at least for his system, benefits him more. But based on what I've seen, I just don't see it considering his skating, because you have to skate really well to play in Mike Sullivan's system. And with that and the numbers that I pulled up, I just don't think it's a good fit.
And then meanwhile, on the other side, the other defenseman that they brought in, Mark Pysyk, he's a 32-year-old defenseman. Numbers are okay. Those baseline numbers, 104 points, 28 goals in a little over 520 games. And to me, originally, before we hit record, I this was another one I was scratching my head on, and then you kind of broke down a little bit what numbers he's put up, his underlyings, and this might be a sneaky good deal and competition for somebody, right?
Yes. Mark Pysyk, he's had really solid underlyings throughout his career. Actually, I think they've been underrated. He's been a player that's kind of been an analytics darling, I should say. Did not play at all this past season, was battling a big injury. It's hard. I believe it was an Achilles that he's coming back from, Pat. And we all know that's really hard to come back from.
Which, unless you're Erik Karlsson, that's really hard to come back
Yes.
from. But again, not to interrupt you, but again, like really good underlying numbers here. So maybe he's 6th, 7th defenseman competition. What are you seeing from him?
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the 2021-2022 season, he ranked in the 82nd percentile for 5-on-5 even strength defense, 52nd percentile for 5-on-5 even strength offense, decent finisher, decent goals per 60 rate. Those are all courtesy of JFresh's charts, which I think are really good. I think of a lot of the people in the analytics community, he's one of the best. But even outside that, he's always been pretty solid in his own zone. When you pull up the tape, he is going to give Chad Ruhwedel, I think, a good run for his money in camp. I think Ruhwedel will still win it, but if he falters, Pysyk is a guy right there that can come in and play with someone like P.O. Joseph if need be. Pysyk, again, good in his own zone. He'll give you a little bit of offense, but I think that's what they want P.O. to do on the third pairing because between the two, he's the better offensive defenseman, let's be real. And I think they want him to continue building his offensive game while also getting a bit better in his own zone. But that kind of pairing would work because you have P.O. who's decent offensively, and you have Pysyk who has good defensive underlyings. And he has shown that on tape as well. I saw a couple instances when I was watching the film on Tuesday night when he was, really using his stick to break up plays in the defensive zone. The biggest thing with him, though, health. Talked about it with the Achilles injury. This is also a player, Pat. He hasn't played a full 82-game season since 2017-18. After that, played 70 games, so close enough. But since then, 58, 36, 68, took this season off. He's got to stay healthy. I think he definitely, of the three, and we'll get to Wagner in a second, I think he has the best chance of making this team out of all the PTOs.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it also puts them in a good asset position should he surprise and make the team, because we all know Kyle Dubas loves to stack assets, especially draft capital. So should Pysyk come in and take a spot from Chad Ruhwedel, maybe you can offload Ruhwedel for a couple of picks or a pick or two, and then you've got that to help you at the deadline or just to rebuild your system. So you brought him up, the last PTO signing they made, Austin Wagner, a left winger who's been not a bad depth forward, all things considered. That's probably his ceiling. He's got 42 points over 178 National Hockey League games. Again, though, fits the mold of kind of what we've been talking about this offseason. Good bottom six player, solid defensive metrics, responsible in his own zone, but doesn't put the puck in the net a lot. So it kind of continues on that trend for Kyle Dubas and the Penguins offseason when it comes to bottom six forwards.
It's like a very mini version of Noah Chari, Matt Nieto, and Lars Eller. Those three, very good defensively. Wagner is good defensively. He's just not at their level. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Pat. Just fits the mold of what Dubas has done with a lot of the bottom six this offseason. He's only played 4 seasons in his career, 171 games. 3 of them came with the Kings. This past season, played 7 games with the Blackhawks. 1 goal, 2 points in those games, but does have a season, 2018-19 with the Kings. 12 goals, 21 points in those 62 games. He's only 26, so the people that want younger players on this roster, they will be happy. He'll definitely have a shot at making this team. I mean, if anything, man, that competition for the bottom 6, that is going to be so much fun. I've probably said this 5,000 times on this show with you, and even before then, I can't wait for camp to see what goes down with the bottom 6, because Wagner, this is no AHL dude. Like, he has proven that he can play at the NHL level. Heck, just a few seasons ago, he ranked in the 87th percentile with the Kings, the 2019-20 season. That was the COVID year, ranked in the 87th percentile for 5-on-5 even strength defense. Again, a few years ago, still, that's really solid. And if he can put together a really good camp, impress in the preseason, he will have a shot at making this roster. So honestly, that could change it a little bit. I think 2 of these guys at least have a shot at making the roster while the other one doesn't. If I had to pick one that has the best chance, though, I'm going to go with Pysyk just because the forward competition is it's insane.
Yeah. And we said it on I said it on the show before. Competition brings out the best in everyone, especially a franchise like this. You want your role players to always be battling to keep their spots because that's going to force them to up their game. So bringing a guy in like Wagner to add some competition is only a positive. He either becomes a part of the roster and makes the team, or he's going to force the guys who are already here to up their games as we go into camp. Well, that's going to do it for this segment, but that's not all the Penguins have done this week. We're going to talk about some front office moves they made earlier this week, and that's coming up right after this. But first, we've got to tell you about our sponsor, FanDuel. So NFL season is right around the corner, and get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the National Football League. We're back here on the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of the hosts, Patrick Damp, joined again by Hunter Hodes. Thank you again for making this your first listen or watch of the day. As we said before we went to break, the Penguins have made a couple of front office moves as well. Forgive me, Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm probably going to butcher a couple of these names, but I'm going to give it a shot. They've hired Mark Osecki, Matt Laredo, and as professional scouts, Robbie Sandlin and Brandon DeFazio as amateur scouts, and the name that everybody's going to be talking about, especially if you are on Twitter or X, if you're so inclined, Cam Charron as a hockey research and development analyst. I got to tell you, Hunter, I saw the name Cam Charron and I thought I was going to hit the ceiling. For those of you who know me, I'm not a tall man, so that's a pretty big achievement. But Cam Charron's work at this point speaks for itself. I have it bookmarked, believe it or not, on my computer. When he returned to The Athletic in October of 2022 and wrote his opening column about everything he learned working as an analyst for the Maple Leafs in a front office as a hockey analyst, this dude is smart, and this is a brilliant move for Dubas to bring him back.
I'm excited. The more analytics people you can bring into your front office, the better. That is the way this game is trending. And if you're not hiring at least a couple of analytics-based people into your front office, you are going to be left behind. Cam is awesome. Spent the last 8 years with the Maple Leafs. He was, I think, one of the original hashtag fancy stats people from hockey Twitter back when I was, late middle school into early high school. He's been doing this for a very long time. And I do think Kyle Dubas is going to rely on him when he's making roster moves, when he wants to make trades, call-ups, all that good stuff. They also have a couple of other analytics-based people in their front office so that he's going to use as well. This is a great move for the Penguins. And remember, when the Fenway Sports Group let go of Ron Hextall and Brian Burke, one of the things that they wanted to do was build out their analytics department. They thought that it was lacking with the Penguins. Bring in Kyle Dubas, who has obviously the scouting background and he has the numbers background. Well, you're seeing him do both with these moves. You bring in some scouts and you bring in an analytics-based person, in Cam, who has been really good throughout his career. And I think this is not the last of these moves. You are going to see more people who have a background in analytics come into this organization because that's how Fenway Sports Group likes their organizations run. They love the data people in their sports teams. Look at the Boston Red Sox. You look at Liverpool, right? Go onto those websites. look who is in their front offices and all that good stuff. You will see quite a few people from analytics-based backgrounds, and this is just the start for the Penguins.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. For those of you who may not want to do the reading, jump on, I think it's HBO Max, and watch Moneyball. That's right. Fenway Sports Group. Now the movie's going to focus on the Oakland Athletics, but when nobody in baseball would touch Bill James, guess who touched Bill James? The Boston Red Sox and Fenway Sports Group. And what did they do just one season later? They broke their curse and won a World Series. But for the rest of the moves, I'm not going to read the whole release from the Penguins. You guys can go ahead and do that. But it again strikes what we've talked about with what Kyle Dubas has been doing with this front office. There are experienced people that he's hiring, but they're not just people who have been in the NHL. You run down the experience of the people he hired, they made this hire from, guys who have coached at every level of hockey, AHL, USHL, college, juniors. The scouts have scouted everywhere from amateur hockey, minor league hockey, junior hockey in North America to over in Europe. These are people who have a diverse set of experiences. And we talked about it on this show before. The biggest thing you need to be successful, whether it be business, life, sports, whatever, is being able to get a diverse group of people in the room from diverse experiences and backgrounds and find the best idea. So this isn't the same recycled 5 or 6 guys who get scouting jobs and coaching jobs. And I did my 3 years here, so I'm going to go do my 3 years here. And then I'm going to just keep cycling it in and out. So he is going to have a lot of voices in the room. And so long as they can either find some kind of consensus or build toward one, that's only going to lead to better outcomes for this organization. Because as we've talked about, they're going to be in a weird spot in the next 5-6 years where a handful of generational talents are going to be out the door, and they're going to have to find a way to get this team back to contention. So using analytics, using experience, and leveraging the salary cap are all going to be necessary tools to getting this team from a rebuild back to contention in 6, 7, 8 years.
Right. And I think diverse is the best way you can describe the front office right now. You have Kyle Dubas, you have Vuki Mapofu, who he hired away from the Kings. You have Jason Spezza, he brought over from Toronto. You have now Cam Charron. You have these new scouts. He did keep Nick Pryor. And yes, that's probably going to make quite a few people mad. I am also a bit confused by it, considering that that was a Hextall hire, but it's obvious, I think, that Kyle really likes him and that he respects him. He would not still be on the staff if he didn't, like his work and all that other stuff. And then
they probably talked too. Yeah. It wasn't like Dubas just came in with a flamethrower and said, he's a fair guy. He probably came in and sat down and talked to people and said, all right, give me your philosophy. Give me your thoughts. Let's have a discussion and figure out if you're going to fit in this front office. Buck stops with him, but he probably saw something in Pryor, and angry as that may make us, he's only a couple years older than me, and he's the president of hockey operations of a huge NHL team. So who am I to criticize?
Right. And then you have the 3 analytics-based hires in there with Cam. You have Katarina Wu, who is carried over from the Hextall era, and you have also Caleb Pena, who is also there too. So there's 3, and I think, again, that's only going to expand as these next few months and I think a few years go by, as long as Kyle Dubas is the president and the GM of this franchise.
So that's about all we got for this segment. When we return, watching the Penguins on TV next year, well, we've got some updates for you. And we're back on the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Patrick Damp. That's Hunter Hodes. Thank you again, one last time, for making this your first listener watch of the day. As we talked about just before we went to break there, big breaking news in the TV rights world of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the city of Pittsburgh for the Pirates and Penguins as well. Fenway Sports Group has agreed to purchase AT&T Sportsnet. So what does this mean? Well, if you understand who FSG is, you understand that they're also the owners of the regional sports network that hosts the Boston Red Sox and the Boston Bruins. NESN, NESN for shorthand. So it kind of looks like this is what they're on track to do here in Pittsburgh. They're going to take the regional TV rights away from AT&T Sportsnet, and they're going to package them up themselves. And by the sound of it, Hunter, it doesn't seem like a whole lot is going to change right away, at least. At least that's what it sounds like when it comes to the Penguins. What are you thinking about this?
I think you're right. The only main question I have, and I put this out on Twitter a couple of days ago, my biggest question, and it's not even a really concern, it's just a question. Is Steve Mears, Bob Airey, and Dan Pochas still going to call games for the Penguins, or are they going to get a brand new team in there to call games? I know people have their opinions on Mears, they have their opinions on Airey and Potash, but I still, if I had to lean one way or the other, I think they're going to continue to call games for the Penguins, even if it's on, I guess, a different channel, quote unquote. The money thing from this article, and this is from John Arand of Sports Business Journal, great reporter, by the way, for this website.
Agreed.
I mean, he even said that it's going to be like a direct-to-consumer service surrounding the Penguins. That is great news, especially because I think there are a lot of people in this area that don't get this channel, especially because, hey, they don't have cable. Heck, for me, at my place, I have YouTube TV. It is annoying to me
Same
that
here.
AT&T Sportsnet does not go on YouTube TV. So if Fenway Sports Group, and I know I'm probably sounding like a selfish idiot here, if they can, I guess, develop a direct-to-consumer service that goes on a platform like YouTube TV and some of these other platforms that people use that don't have cable, that's only going to grow, I guess, more fans for the team. I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is a good move. They've done a really good job with NESN in Boston, and I think they're going to do a good job with this, whatever deal they come to. But again, my biggest question overall is who is going to be calling the games? Because again, I know people have their opinions, but I'm still, I guess, I'm confused about that part.
The thing that kind of stood out to me was the way this was worded, was that FSG appears to have purchased AT&T Sportsnet away from Warner Brothers. So to me, that kind of signals that at least in the immediate, we're not going to see a ton of changes, partially because we got 2 days left in August, day and a half, basically, when we're recording this. So they're not going to be able to make full scale changes with the season this close. So they're probably going to basically do status quo, maybe a couple tinkers here and there on the margins. And then maybe next summer you look at expanding it or adding original programming or even bringing in a new crew. Who knows what FSG wants to do. Now, I'm with you on this. I'm a YouTube TV subscriber, so I can't watch Penguins games. I can't watch Pirates games because it's not carried on YouTube TV. The other thing is I work in television, so I hear about this stuff all the time. One of the biggest issues that RSNs and sports leagues are very close to facing is the fact that a lot of people don't have cable anymore. If I recall correctly, I'd have to look it up real quick, but I can't remember where I saw it. But I remember seeing a study that this was the first year in the history of television, in the advent of cable TV, that less people had cable TV than had streaming. So this is going to be a huge question mark for a lot of teams, a lot of networks, a lot of media companies, because not only are people cutting the cord, basically every major league team has in-house media. So eventually they're going to be able to broadcast these games directly to consumers rather than having to sell the rights to their games to a media company. So it's going to be incumbent on these RSNs, these networks, these media companies to find some kind of resolution, or they're going to be locked out of sports. And if there's one thing that keep people coming back to cable, it is live sports.
Yes, 100%. I think that's the main reason why so many people, I guess, still have cable. The ones that do are live sports. I mean, some people still watch the news, something like that, NBC Nightly News, CNN, all that other stuff. But I think for the people that still have cable, it's because, Pat, of these sports events, especially on those local RSNs. You said it, you have YouTube TV like me. How many people out there have to illegally stream games online on those weird websites because you're blacked out and all this other stuff? You don't have it on your cable. Millions of people. I mean, heck, ESPN Plus. I was subscribed to ESPN Plus for this past season. Even though I lived in Pittsburgh, it was still giving me the games until late in the year before it finally caught on, like, oh, you live in Pittsburgh, now we're going to black you out. So it was annoying to deal with that. And if FSG can come up with a solution to not have that situation with the blackouts and all that stuff, because I think the local blackout, I mean, that's a whole other issue, Pat. I think blackouts are super stupid, by the way. I think it's a really dumb thing to do in local markets or whatever. But
I mean, that's basically a early cable, early satellite TV rule that has just continued into the modern day, because, that was not pre-internet, but, pre-readily accessible 24/7 internet. That was, hey, I got the NHL center back when it was called the NHL Center Ice package through Direct TV. And they just didn't want you watching, say it's Penguins Flyers on a Friday night. They didn't want you watching the Flyers feed in Pittsburgh. They wanted you watching the local network.
Right. And I get that. I just think it's probably time to get with the times a bit now and just get rid of blackouts. But again, we can have that discussion a whole other day. But you're right. It's incumbent on FSG to come up with a direct-to-consumer service here that benefits everyone. The people with cable, the people that have cut the cord, everyone. And if you want to make fans, I guess, pay for it a little bit, sure. Heck, I will pay for it. I know you will pay for it. I know plenty of fans out there, especially the ones not even in Pittsburgh, will pay for it. It's just, I think there needs to be a better solution than the one we have right now with AT&T Sportsnet only being on, a few cable services and not to people who have these other things like YouTube TV. I know it's on Fubo TV, I believe. It actually is broadcasted on there. But some of these other ones like YouTube TV and a few others, it's not there. And that's a problem for people that don't have cable.
Right. And my last point on this is one thing that I think FSG has a huge opportunity in front of them for with this development. There is absolutely a market and a demand in the city of Pittsburgh and the greater Pittsburgh area for a dedicated Pittsburgh sports channel. Does it have to be 24/7? No, but it can be better than what AT&T Sports Network was. It can be from noon until 11 at night or midnight, where it's just all Penguins, Pirates, and Steelers talk, live Pirates games, live Penguins games, pre and post game shows. And in a city like this, the joke I always make at work is, in Pittsburgh, man, a Steeler farts and we talk about it for 3 days. So there's a market for it.
There is. I mean, heck, if we can get to that point with the Penguins where a Penguin player farts, something like that, then that'd be even more funnier. But I don't think we'll ever get there, considering how popular the Steelers are in this city. Football will always be number one, I think, in Pittsburgh, though hockey is directly behind. But yeah, I think I've hit all the points I wanted to make. I think you have too. If you have anything else you want to add before we call it here.
No, is there anything that you would like to say to our audience before you jet set on vacation and leave the kids at home to have a house party?
Yeah. Pat's going to be doing this solo for Friday, Monday, and I believe Wednesday as well. We'll have a discussion on that. I fly back a little late on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm going on my final summer vacation here with my lady. We're celebrating our anniversary, so really excited about that. Again, after this, I'm not going on vacation for a while. We'll be in full training camp mode coming out of this vacation. Camp will only be about a couple weeks away when we come back, so really excited about that. You got the Steelers season coming, but I know one thing. Pat has a lot of fun things coming on these next 2 to 3 episodes.
And yes, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, I'll give you guys a tease. On Friday, we're jumping back into the multiverse, and I've got a great guest to take the trip with me. So that's going to do it for us for this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you on Friday.